8th April 1986, 5:19 in the morning, Cape Verde, a small island nation located in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. The first rays of the sun were slowly spreading across the hills of São Vicente Island. Waves were crashing against the black volcanic rocks, and the salty breeze was drifting through the narrow streets where life had never been easy. In this tiny country, barely visible on the world map, a child was born that morning. For decades, no one could have imagined that one day he would stand on the biggest stage in world football as the last line of defense for his nation. That child's name was João Ricardo Pereira Batalha, but the world was about to know him by a different name, Vozinha. Welcome to another new episode of our channel's The Real Talk series. But before we begin the story, a small request. If you enjoy factual videos like these, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like the video, and leave a comment sharing your thoughts on this kind of analysis. Watch this entire episode in detail, and you will understand the complete story. So, let's begin today's episode.
Cape Verde was one of those countries where football was not just a sport. It was hope amid poverty, a pathway to dreams among limited opportunities, and a bridge connecting children living on small islands to the rest of the world. Vozinha's childhood unfolded in exactly this environment. His family did not possess great resources. Life was ordinary, but the dreams were extraordinary. Football, played on streets, fields, and open spaces near the sea, became an inseparable part of his childhood. While other children dreamed of scoring goals, this boy was often seen standing in front of the goalpost. Perhaps from the very beginning, he liked stopping things, stopping defeat, stopping disappointment, and stopping every challenge that came his way. As time passed, his height increased, his body grew stronger, and his reflexes became exceptional. People watching local competitions quickly realized that this was no ordinary goalkeeper. He possessed patience. He did not panic. His ability to wait until the final moment set him apart from everyone else. But talent and success were two different things.
For a player born in a small country like Cape Verde, the road to the world stage was never straightforward. Every opportunity had to be fought for. By the time he reached adulthood, Vozinha had become a part of the local football structure. He began playing for smaller clubs. Every match was a test. Young players from larger countries had access to modern training facilities, specialist coaches, and better resources. Vozinha had only hard work. Yet history often favors those who have fewer resources but greater determination. Gradually, his name began spreading throughout the local football community. His presence beneath the goalpost became synonymous with reliability. In the early 2000s, Cape Verdean football was still largely unknown on the world stage. The national team was never considered among football's major powers. Yet during this period, several players were emerging who would change the country's identity. Vozinha was one of them.
He continued working tirelessly at club level. Many times, his career reached points where moving forward seemed impossible. Yet every time he returned stronger than before. The journey to the national team was not easy. He spent years proving himself to earn a place at the international level. When he first wore the Cape Verde jersey, perhaps no one imagined that this player would become an integral part of the country's football history for the next decade and a half. His arrival in the national team came at a time when Cape Verde was slowly trying to establish itself in African football. African football is considered extremely demanding. It tests not only technique, but also physical strength, mental resilience, and the ability to perform under difficult conditions.
Vozinha faced all these challenges. With every match, his experience grew. He witnessed numerous disappointments, endured several failed qualification campaigns, and faced nights when dreams seemed to be falling apart. But he never abandoned the national team. The year 2013 marked a significant turning point in Cape Verde's football history. For the first time, the nation attracted the world's attention at the Africa Cup of Nations. Vozinha was part of that journey. It was not merely a tournament, it was a message to the entire country that even a small nation could dream big. For the first time, millions realized that their country was not just a tiny island on the map, but also a rising force in the football world. Year after year, Vozinha's experience continued to grow. Many players came and went, but he remained. His age increased, but his importance did not diminish.
The role of a goalkeeper is unique. Here, experience often outweighs youthful speed. Gradually, Vozinha became the guardian of the team. His role continued to expand both on and off the field. As his 30s drew to a close, discussions began across the football world that perhaps his career was entering its final chapter. But Vozinha's story was not like that of ordinary players. While most players begin declining, he started reinventing himself. His fitness, discipline, and mental strength kept him competitive. He had become an inspiration for younger players. Then came the period that changed the history of an entire nation. The 2026 FIFA World Cup qualification campaign. Cape Verde had never qualified for a World Cup before. For decades, the dream had remained only a fantasy. But this time felt different.
There was belief inside the squad. There was hunger among the players. And standing beneath the goalpost was a veteran warrior who had endured years of disappointment and now had a chance to rewrite history. The qualification campaign was difficult. Every match carried immense pressure. Every point mattered. But Cape Verde refused to surrender. When the decisive matches arrived, Vozinha delivered remarkable performances, defying his age. On many occasions, his saves rescued the team. Slowly, the dream began turning into reality. And then came the moment the entire country had waited generations for. Cape Verde qualified for the FIFA World Cup for the very first time. The entire nation erupted in celebration. Festivities spread from the beaches to the mountain towns.
This was not merely a sporting achievement. It was a moment of national pride. And at the center of this story stood a goalkeeper approaching 40 years of age, a man who refused to give up. 11 June 2026, North America, opening week of the FIFA World Cup. The world's attention was fixed on football's grandest stage. Argentina, Brazil, France, Spain, and England dominated the headlines. Yet among those glittering names stood a nation whose population was smaller than many major cities, Cape Verde. A nation of small Atlantic islands that had turned an impossible dream into reality. As they entered the World Cup, most experts viewed them merely as participants. Very few believed they could challenge any major power. But history is often written when expectations are at their lowest.
When Cape Verde's players arrived at the World Cup village, the player attracting the most attention was Vozinha. Playing in a World Cup at the age of 40 was an extraordinary achievement in itself. Many of his opponents had not even been born when he began his professional journey. Journalists called him a veteran warrior. Some described him as a living heritage of African football. But for Vozinha, this recognition was not enough. He had dedicated his entire life to this moment. He had not come merely to participate in a World Cup. He wanted to prove that Cape Verde had not arrived here by accident. The group stage draw was revealed, and Cape Verde found itself in a difficult group. The biggest name in that group was Spain. World Cup champions, European giants, one of the most technically gifted teams in the world.
When the fixture was announced, most analysts had already predicted the result. According to them, Spain would win comfortably. But football is not played on paper. 15 June 2026, 12 noon. a massive stadium packed with spectators, millions of people watching from television screens around the world. As Spain stepped onto the field, confidence was clearly visible on the faces of its players. On the other side stood Cape Verde's players, carrying the weight of history on their shoulders. The national anthems ended. The cameras repeatedly focused on Vozinha. The 40-year-old goalkeeper appeared calm, as though years of struggle had prepared him for this single moment. The whistle blew, and Spain immediately established control of possession. Wave after wave of attacks surged toward Cape Verde. One opportunity followed another.
To the thousands inside the stadium, it felt as though the opening goal was only moments away. But every single time, a wall appeared before them. That wall was Vozinha. Sometimes he flew to the right, sometimes to the left. Sometimes he pushed the ball away with both hands. Other times, he produced unbelievable reflex saves. Minute after minute, the pressure intensified. Yet the scoreboard remained unchanged. The first half ended. Spain could hardly believe they had failed to score. Meanwhile, Cape Verde's confidence continued to grow. They began believing that history could truly be changed. In the second half, Spain became even more aggressive. The ball repeatedly entered the penalty area. But every attack ended in the hands of the man who had devoted 4 decades of his life to the game. Time slowly moved toward its conclusion. The atmosphere inside the stadium had changed.
People were no longer watching only Spain. They were watching the goalkeeper who was challenging the limits of age itself. With every save, his name grew larger. Cape Verde's defensive line was exhausted, yet Vozinha remained unshaken. Fatigue was visible on his face, but there was no sign of surrender. Then, the final whistle sounded. The scoreboard read Spain 0, Cape Verde 0. On paper, it was an ordinary draw. In reality, it was one of the greatest achievements in Cape Verdean football history. Holding a global powerhouse in a World Cup debut was nothing short of a miracle. Spain's players looked disappointed. Cape Verde's players were overwhelmed with joy. And standing at the center of the field was Vozinha, the boy who had once started playing football on the small islands of the Atlantic Ocean. At that moment, more than a match had ended.
A long journey had reached its peak. Dusty childhood streets, limited resources, countless struggles, years of hard work, Africa Cup of Nations campaigns, failures, comebacks, World Cup qualification, and finally, a performance that would live forever on football's biggest stage. Everything seemed to be contained within that single afternoon. While the world moved on to the next matches, this story meant something much deeper to the people of Cape Verde. It was the story of believing that the size of a nation does not define the limits of its dreams. It was the story of a player who never accepted defeat as the final truth. And it was the story of a goalkeeper who, in his 40th year of life, reminded the world that experience, patience, and determination never grow old.
Vozinha's name may never appear among those legendary players who possess World Cup trophies and golden awards. But some names become immortal, not through statistics, but through inspiration. Vozinha had become one of those names. To emerge from a small island in the Atlantic Ocean, reach the biggest stage in world football, and stand firm against a power like Spain, this was not merely the story of a footballer. It was the story of a dream that never gives up. Today's episode ends here. We will meet again next week with another new story and another new episode. Until then, thank you for watching. Stay alert, stay safe, and always take care of yourself.